So in a shocking twist of events, Russia's partnership with North Korea has just gotten serious, and what they have done is going to change the trajectory of the conflict and even reshape this entire economic war. And think about it, you already have the West freaking out over Russia and China's economic alliance. China is already buying a ton of commodities from Russia to power their economy, and this unlocks a ton of revenue for Moscow. In fact, Ukraine just added three of China's biggest oil firms to their list of war sponsors for having joint ventures with Russia. The West is afraid of a forever war, and they know the more oil Putin sells to China, the more revenue will flow towards his war chest. Now, while the West is banding together, the East is also coming together to keep the fighting going. And now, North Korea is providing military and economic support to Russia. And this is unprecedented and is a reminder that this conflict could drag on for many more years to come. We could be at the beginnings of a forever war. According to a US official, North Korea is providing Russia artillery for the Ukraine war as the US hands Ukraine ammunition seized from Iran. Both sides are starting to rearm themselves, and clearly nothing is off the table. Providing artillery and ammunition is not just military support, it is also economic support. The weapons are already sitting there, so you literally save time and money to produce them. For example, America is sending 1.1 million rounds from seized Iranian shipments, and these are weapons they didn't produce themselves, they just need to ship it to the Eastern Front. And for Russia, they are getting more valuable artillery and munitions from North Korea. Now, we have no idea what happened behind the scenes, but it is very likely Russia is building closer economic ties with the North. And what does North Korea want? According to Russia, Kim is showing great interest in space in rocketry. The North wants to build a space program and possibly shoot up their own satellites into space. Remember, that's just on the surface, guys. North Korea is a heavily sanctioned country that also needs a lot of food and hard cash to survive. Now, of course, the West, America, doesn't like this situation, and they're obviously worried about North Korea using the technology for their missile ambitions. And that's why this conflict is starting to reach a dangerous turning point. Now, if Russia keeps getting weapons from North Korea, this is going to drain out the West. They have to try and keep up, which will force them to pour even more money into a black hole. And this is where things get really sticky. The US government is now literally in chaos, and it all has to do with providing Ukraine with additional aid. Now, the more money being funneled to Ukraine is tearing the US economy apart and literally splitting Congress into two camps, two opposing camps. One side doesn't want the funding to continue, while the other wants endless deficit spending to keep the fight going. We have senators willing to force an economic shutdown of the entire United States if Ukraine aid is excluded from the funding bill. Biden is also pressurizing the Republicans to provide more aid to Ukraine, saying that he is sick and tired of this political brinksmanship. So you can see how big of a spanner Putin and Kim just threw into the US political machine. Now, if Russia keeps getting military support from North Korea, this would mean the Pentagon has to keep churning out weapons for Ukraine. Weapons, they cost money, and it pulls capital away from the productive parts of the economy into the industrial military complex. Now, funding them doesn't increase the supply of commodities. In fact, it reduces them. So the end game is going to be an inflationary crisis once again. And here's how critical the situation really is. Congress has already given $113 billion in military and economic aid to Ukraine, and President Biden is asking for additional $24 billion. That is an incredible amount of money that isn't sitting in some vault. America doesn't really have their own stash of reserves. They have to either print it into existence or borrow money from the rest of the world to fund Ukraine. Additionally, the Pentagon is warning that there's only $1.6 billion left in existing aid to replenish US military stocks. And if this money runs out, America will have to dip into their own stockpiles for Zelensky, or they might even stop providing aid altogether. There's really an incredible fear surrounding North Korea and Russia coming together. In a paper from the RAND Corporation, a think tank, just the title alone tells us the big nightmare America is afraid of. North Korea and Russia and China, the developing trilateral imperialist partnership. Just the title alone makes them sound like the new galactic empire. And a big part of the paper outlines how America must keep the war spending up. The United States needs to continue developing new military capabilities that will allow it to deal with Russia, China, and North Korea at a price that the United States can afford. But is that even possible? Can America keep borrowing money to deal with this new trilateral partnership, right? And this is where we leave fantasy land and travel towards reality. And I think there's now a big realization that America can't keep funding the war effort forever. It will bankrupt the country. Additional funding piles on more debt and pushes the financial system to the brink of collapse. Looking at the US bond market, we can see the true extent of this spending damage. In a shocking story from Bloomberg, long-term bonds just had a historic 46% meltdown that rivals the dot-com bubble collapse. But it gets worse. The 30-year yield has reached a record high of 5%, which throws us back to the 2007 levels. Just look at the damage US treasuries have sustained. Long-term bonds have crashed more than 45% from their peak. This is an insane drop that hasn't happened for over 40 years. And this isn't just pushing up borrowing costs for the US government, but businesses and companies throughout the United States. Investors, including pension funds, old people's money, are also losing a ton of money on their bond holdings. So America is truly caught between the devil and the deep blue sea. If they keep borrowing money for Ukraine, this will spike bond yields to the moon. But if they don't, especially with Russia now getting North Korean support, Ukraine might even lose European money as well. And which door will they choose? Keep doubling down and borrowing more, or look after America's domestic economy first? And that's why the North Korea-Russia alliance has a huge economic impact. It's not just about weapon support, that is the obvious effect, but behind the scenes, they are pushing America closer and closer towards a fiscal cliff, towards bankruptcy. But it seems the White House is hell-bent on sending Ukraine even more money, even at the expense of the US economy. In a statement by the press secretary, "We will have another package of aid for Ukraine soon, and if Putin thinks he can outlast us, we believe he is wrong. But where's this money going to come from?" In a previous video, we covered how America might be looking to cross the economic red line. They were having discussions about using Russia's frozen reserves for Ukraine's rebuilding. But another thought came into my mind. What if the money was used to fund the war effort instead? In a news update, Antony Blinken is now supporting using Russia's assets to pay for Ukraine's rebuilding, saying that you broke it, you bought it. Sure, there are still many legal challenges to seizing Russia's assets, but I won't be surprised if this eventually becomes a reality. They could always take the money outright to help fund Ukraine. And according to Blinken, there's around $300 billion of Russian reserves frozen as of today. That is a lot of money that could be used to keep the war effort going. Alternatively, with bond yields so high in the United States, putting $300 billion to work could actually fund the war further. Now, the 6-month Treasury yield currently sits at 5.5%. So just imagine if $300 billion is used to buy this Treasury bond. You get over $16 billion a year on the interest payments alone, and that is a big sum of money that can keep the battle going. Now, I'm not saying this will happen, but it's a possibility that we can't ignore. There will be more twists, there will be more turns to this economic war. Now, I don't think they'll really do it because it's literally unthinkable. It's crossing the Rubicon, and once you do that, you'll break any faith left in the US dollar system. The cries for de-dollarization will be louder than ever, and there's literally no way to reverse the effects. But it's possible if Russia keeps getting support from the East, and the biggest worry America has is the no-limits partnership between Russia and China. And if you think North Korea's support is bad, wait till you see how strong Russia's economic alliance is with China. And once again, we must view them as one unified economic unit for things to really make sense. And during a keynote speech in Sochi, Putin made quite a few statements that we need to pay attention to. It underscores the importance of China-Russian relations and how they are planning to integrate their supply chains. And listen to this, we are interested in establishing new logistic routes, and China is also interested in this. We are now talking about the North-South corridor, and this is a sign that Putin intends to build up the ground route that starts from Russia and cuts through Iran towards India. And interestingly enough, they are calling this a sanction-proof route with great economic prospects. Because it bypasses the Suez Canal, the route is 40% shorter and 30% cheaper in terms of distance and time. But more importantly, it can be connected to China's Belt Road project. And the original plan of the West was to isolate Russia economically, right? The goal of the dollar sanctions and all the oil price caps was to starve out their revenues and make it painful to trade with Russia. But that doesn't seem to be working very well. In fact, trade between Russia and China is reaching historic highs, which is freaking the West out. In a story by Bloomberg, China is selling so much stuff to Russia that containers are piling up. Russia expects trade with China to exceed $200 billion in 2023. And it makes sense if you think about it. China needs lots of commodities from Russia to power their economy. We are talking about oil, we're talking about gas and metals, and what China needs, Russia has it all. And in return, China is shipping tons of finished goods and semiconductors to Moscow. It's a symbiotic relationship. And something tells me that they aren't using the US dollar to settle these trades. They are using the ruble and the yuan and not the reserve currency. Trade between these two countries have grown so high that the market for containers in Russia have literally collapsed. We are seeing container prices in Russia drop like a rock ever since the start of the Western sanctions. It has crashed from $3,000 to under $600 in less than a year. There are a ton of shipping containers coming in from China and very little going out, and this is just a start. Once they start unifying their trading routes, we'll see the true effects of de-dollarization start to play out. So North Korea is truly a wild card in this Game of Thrones. We have literally no idea what the Hermit Kingdom is planning, but it's likely they would continue providing ammunition to Russia. Earlier in September, Jake Sullivan, the NSA advisor, warned that North Korea would pay a price if they supplied Russia with weapons. But at this point, what else can America sanction North Korea with? The North is already incredibly isolated and they only trade with Russia or China, so there's little else that can be done. The more America continues hammering away at China or Russia, the more unpredictable things will become. And the main event to watch is the US-China relations because things are starting to look really bleak. Ray Dalio, legendary investor, believes that America and China are on the brink of red lines, and he draws a very scary connection to how US sanctions can push countries towards a conflict. He's warning that Biden's chip ban on China is similar to the pre-World War II oil sanctions the United States placed on Japan, and the oil curbs were in fact one factor that probably led to Pearl Harbor. And it makes a lot of sense. Chips are the new oil, and by restricting chips to China, they are preventing technological growth. So it is essential to pay close attention to what America might do next to China, because that could be the next flashpoint that starts another conflict. But the fact still remains that China, Russia, and now North Korea are all banding together to resist the West. And because of this united economic and military support, we could see this conflict drag on indefinitely. Russia is prepared for a forever war, but I'm not sure if the West is prepared for one. But let me know what you think in the comments below. What's the deal between Russia and North Korea? And how will America respond to this? Let me know in the comments below. Stay safe, be sure to smash the like button and subscribe as we navigate through these crazy times.